Thank you, Dr. Sivin, for your very informative talk. Please stay there. So we come to Q&A session. Please introduce yourself and brief question.
I was just going to relate something that I'm doing a research on. I'm reading about 100 khutbah or Friday sermon of the Selangor, because I myself sometimes hear the khatib or the person giving the sermon saying something about Christians and Jews. I think there was only once, and then what my concern about doing the research about this 100 khutbah? It's about communication. It's about writing. It's an academic thing. I was looking for how many times did the khutbah refer to the killings and the death of, say, the Orlando shooting, the Nice thing and things like that. So I was trying to look at, if you don't mention those things, that's why I made a statement in the press, silence was an issue, okay? But the thing that got me interested was that when I was reading this 100 khutbah, I didn't see them mentioning anything about Christians and Jews like the ones that I heard before. And I said that this was a good thing, because if you don't say something bad about Christians and all that, then, well, actually you are respecting our constitution. And it came as a shock to me when you showed that book just now, that you can blatantly put it in black and white. Christians, well, of course we know the ustaz, they are certain education. I don't know whether they have PhDs or not and things like that, but certainly you cannot stereotype or generalize. You could say American Christians, or you could say some Christians, or some Jews and things like qualification, we call it, qualifying. So I think if such a kind of a legal matter or something like this appear, I think that there is cause for us to academically criticism that it cannot be so for the harmony of our country. You can't say some Christians, because I'm trying to say that history and religion are two different things, you know. So this, I was wondering whether you made any protest in that light. Not to say that no, Christianity is not wrong, but I'm saying that qualifying. Have you ever done that before?
Hello, my name is Liz. I'm from the UK, but I live in Singapore. From what you were speaking about, kind of reminds me, I've heard it often in the UK and Europe context, talk about Christian phobia. I want to know how relevant is that as a useful concept within the Southeast Asian context? And sort of, and a caveat, what I would also like to add, since the first time I'm in KL as well, is the fact that what I'm hearing here, you can actually quite easily reverse it and look at the Muslim situation in Europe and the US and Australia. So in many senses, I think we're all, depending on which part of the world we come from, we're all experiencing the same kind of things. Just that it happens to be in this part of the world, but I also would like to reflect that it is happening in the other side of the world, but where it's the majority community here who is considered as, you know, perpetrator, and the other side, it's the Christian community who is considered as the perpetrator. So I think that's quite an important comment to make on top of, especially this conversation that we're having today.
My name is Apsara. I would just like to ask a very simple question. What can Muslims, Christians, and other religions do, especially people who are within that denomination, in order to promote greater awareness and greater harmony among themselves? Because I think one of the difficulties, I think, is for people to truly reach that boundary to understand the others. I just want to know what would you propose?
Okay. The first one, more straightforward. I think the Christian Federation of Malaysia did protest, not so much specifically on the content of that booklet that was published by the Selangor Islamic Religious Department, but it was in the context of a seminar organized in the one of the public universities. So they did protest about that, and then they had some speakers that they claimed certain qualifications and which didn't really have it. So that was that. Yes, correct. So this is in the context of that. This is still downloadable on the internet. There are two books that can be downloaded. The other one is about why you must protect and defend the Allah, use of the word Allah. All right, so that is one, more straightforward. So the church has, but probably, but I am interested also in the point that you talked about. What are the 100 sermons, right? Because I also am self-critical. I sometimes wonder what kind of sermons do my students preach. I teach people how to preach, you know, and I just started doing that. And I'm curious also to listen to that. I remember there was one Muslim friend who came and talked to me one day. He said that he went to this big church in Kuala Lumpur, and after listening to the sermon, he said, oh, wow, with all this anti-human rights, anti-liberalism, anti-relativism, he was listening from a Christian sermon. This sounds like Najib. And that kind of took me aback, because I wanted to know, how does it look from the other side? And of course, this is also a problem that Christians need to deal with as well. Now, like you were a bit more careful going with the more Confucian idea, right? Do not do unto others what you do not want them to do to you, right? So don't talk bad about others, that's considered good. But I think the Jesus imperative is also good. How about do unto others what you want them to do to you? So it would be interesting if there were pastors in their sermons would actually use, like an example that I used, to talk about someone who stood in solidarity with a suffering situation. When I had 1G, for example, to the seminary, that helped. So this is something that internally we wrestle with, I have to admit.
Well, actually, I haven't finished telling all about my paper. One of them was about, actually, we should actually, in the sermon, talk about some of the values of the other religion, if possible.
Yeah.
You know, when they have this and things like that. But I know that.
Of course, we're asking a lot. But I'd like to just highlight some other thing, because I was looking at Jakim's website again recently. It's my hobby. Jakim's website, or my Jakim WhatsApp, my Jakim Apple app, you know. I asked, you know, they have this part you can ask questions. So I just look at it to see what are the ways they answer. And because this is the cultural production that is out there, right? But there was this particular Risalah, this tract, that actually talked about Islam in Malaysia defined as Shafi'i Islam. Very clearly in the TN50 document. There's this document. The last couple of Friday sermons were actually about some of the government programs that was coming up, which I thought was very interesting. How this is brought into your Friday mosque. Now, sociologists, others, we could do the research. How many people really listen to the sermons? That's a different question. All right, that is a different question. But the fact that this is produced out there. The second question is Christian phobia. I lived in Norway for 4 years, and I know what you're talking about. When MH370 went missing, right? My neighbor came to me and said, I know you're a Malaysian, this is so horrible. But he said, it's understandable. And I asked him why. Oh, he said, this old man from Netherlands, but married a Norwegian, my neighbor, very nice man, you know, he taught me how to mow the lawn. He said, oh, it's just understandable. The pilot is a Muslim. Oh, the pilot is a Muslim, therefore it is understandable the plane goes missing. And then I went through a little round of a couple of minutes to try to explain to him how many pilots in Malaysia are Muslims and how some of them are friends, etc. My cousin works with Air Asia and all that kind of thing. And after a while, then one day we were talking again, and then he said, oh, then you must be a Muslim. Then I said, no, I'm an ordained minister with the Lutheran Church and all that. Maybe it's this little thing that causes it. I don't know. But it's interesting that at a cultural level in Norway, there's a lot of lack of religious literacy in the common people. Of course, I went to the university, so the university is somewhat elite in some ways. The picture of Norway I get is quite, it can be jaundiced if I just go one or the other. But even talking to some students, there is a real lack of understanding and a real Islamophobia in some of the websites, more right-wing websites. Andres Breivik, I was there in July 2011, and I was not in Oslo, but I was part of that collective experience with the Norwegians, and I looked through some, and Malaysia was mentioned in his manifesto as a good example of Islamization, all right? So it's interesting that at a cultural level, there are these phobias that they are dealing with. So it's interesting how this is flipped around here, where it's the Christians who, or not just Christians, it may be Hindus or other subgroups that are experiencing this. But actually during the Allah controversy, Christian phobia was mentioned in some of the comments by either Muslims or non-Muslims, the word they used it. As for what can we do, of course, let me share another way. Here's what some of us have done, because it's often easy to talk about what we should do. One of the things that has been very interesting for me is when University of Malaya, somehow for whatever reason, their Academy of Islamic Studies, and out of some personal relationship, one of the professors said that she wanted to bring her students, 40 of them, to visit the seminary because their students want, part of their interreligious studies, civilizational studies. So there is this space that is still there for some engagement. And both of us, of course, we made that happen. The students came, and I got my theological students. Some of them may have Islamophobic tendencies. They're in my class. It takes a long time to de-radicalize. Be careful here, this is public. They are not radical, but they may have certain prejudices. But some of this because of this fear. And if they come with Sabah Sarawak, there are also some real fears that they have. So it's hard, you know. We always wonder what would happen if we put them together without too much orchestration. Just a few questions to guide and let things happen. And it's very interesting how some of the conversations of these 40 over students from and my 20 over or 30 students from the seminary, when they came together, they encounter each other, their face. And they don't just share the fluffy stuff, they share about the struggles, real blatant misunderstandings, you know, of what and usually it's very interesting. The students, when I talk about things they saw on the internet, there's always something on the internet that they saw, some YouTube video where someone may printed the script that of God on a part of their body and it's offensive, you know, and this guy claims he's a Christian. And then my theological student doesn't even know this happened. We live in a different world. But to bring these two worlds together is something that we need to do. The other thing is that at the seminary, we try to be as open as possible whenever there are students who want to do interviews with us. So there was a group from USIM who came to interview me for their school project. And I was very curious why they didn't drink the mineral water that I put on the table. I was really curious. So here I was talking about everything about the seminary, what we do. And then I asked them, is it true that about these WhatsApp messages that I've read somewhere, that if you drink water Christians give to you, that you will get dizzy and confused and maybe get persuaded and converted? And then they paused, right? And then we talked, and I explained to them this notion of holy water and what it really is, kind of dispel some of these very basic 101 things, right? So we had a good laugh. All of them took a bottle of mineral water that the seminary gave them. We took a selfie together. And then in the personal message, one of the students said, Pastor Sivin, please change your status from private to public. I need to share this to my friends because of the fitna that other people have said towards you, the Christians. So it's very interesting. It's really grassroots to some extent as well. So I'm just giving you very grassroots examples. But also the problem of we live in different worlds is really very real. Because to these 5 students who came, my little litmus test, not in a bad way, I asked them, this was already 1 month after Raymond Cole was missing. Have you heard about the pastor, Raymond Cole, who has gone missing? What pastor? What missing? Then after I explained to them what happened, they felt deeply troubled as well. And they could identify what was going on. But they had no clue about this. So in many ways, we live in the same Malaysia, but we live in different worlds. And that is a challenge, I think, for me as an educator, and for us, how can we create the space in between that Laverick was talking about, where interreligious engagement may happen, sometimes with more over food and hospitality, other times maybe with more serious engagement.
Thank you, Saleem. It's always fascinating to hear you talk. Sometimes I wonder, if I had the opportunity to go to your sermon, even that would be a lot more interesting. Compared to the sermons I used to listen every week. Maybe you should do some training to our how do you pray your beliefs?
Well, I must tell you first, that once upon a time, I gave training to a bunch of Muslims because of a Palestinian cause, how to give tracts. Really? So I've done that before. Anyway, we digress.
Yeah, so of course, as you did mention, one similarity between Islam and Christianity in a way is we do share this element of we are both missionary religions.
Yeah.
So, and I think in fact, maybe most of us we have our own experiences in meeting with or in interaction with religious missionary groups. And when it comes to when we meet religious missionary groups who want to propagate religion to a point of with intention to convert religion, I think there is some similarities here between Muslims and also some Christians. For me personally, I have this experience. Sometimes the experience with Muslims could also annoy me, and for me, at least abroad, I do have some experiences meeting with Christian missionary group as well. To some point, the way I put it, they can be like both equally annoying.
Oh yeah,
So,
absolutely.
yeah. So my point is this, because I do personally, I do hold the ideal of religious freedom, but when it comes to how should it be implemented in society, mainly in Malaysia, which going back to your introduction slide, which you also highlighted the elements of peace and harmony. I do prefer, before that, I like to have a situation which we can always freely share ideas and views. Anyone can be open to share views. But when facing the situation when we meet with missionary groups, we sense the situation that things can get tense.
Yep.
In such situation.
Yep.
And at that particular moment, we do sense that, wow, religion can actually be a problem when we face different kind of religion. So, what is your opinion in a way about, do you think that in Malaysia, is it proper if one to have a lot more freer, continuous discussion in public, to share religious views to one of who can challenge one another, or there may be some limitation, and could it be the limitation as what we are having now is actually more or less good enough to proper?
Thank you, Sivin. It's a pleasure listening to you. But I'm also reflecting as you shared some of the stories there. I was also reflecting on my own personal journey, where I used to be this person who wants to go around converting the Christians to Islam.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm the Zakir Naik or Ahmadiyya. But along the way, things change, especially when I begin to question some of the way I understand the other.
Yeah.
And I think there's an elephant in the room, since we're talking about elephant, that is uncomfortable, but really Muslims and perhaps even Christians need to confront with, and that is on our own theology of religions.
Yes.
And that is also pertaining to the idea of salvation. Of course, the idea of salvation in both religions, there are differences, and there's a spectrum of it within each religion, ranging from the most exclusivist to the most pluralist dimensions. But here lies the crux of the matter, that if we were to be very good friends here on earth, Sivin, I'm wondering what's the value of it when I know that at the end of the day you're going to rot in hell forever and we won't be friends in the hereafter. That made me confront with a very difficult situation, that are we just being utilitarian in this world, just trying to tolerate and be nice because we are living in this world together, but at the end of the day I do feel superior than you because I'm going to heaven. Well, I may be not a good Muslim, I may be burning in hell for a short while, but ultimately I'll be in heaven, whereas you'll be there forever. I'm not saying that is my theology, but that is the kind of theology that many Muslims are confronted with, and it's a dilemma for them. And how do you respond to that? So the religious dimensions have to be addressed, particularly on the salvation issues, and I think this is not unique to the Muslims. Christian theology also is dealing with this. So your comments on this?
I guess both of the questions are somewhat interrelated, and it is the elephant in the room, let's face it, okay? Of course, I'm just taking just a step before we get there. is at least we have to come to some shared agreement of the kind of ethics that we need to decide on or commit ourselves to in the process of sharing. But it still doesn't deal with what people really believe, because that is the motivation. And for a lot of Christians, if I don't share with you, and if you die tomorrow, your blood is on my hands. You know, I used to get guilt trips when I hear pastors telling me that, by the way, I used to be pretty fundamentalist too, if that is okay, you know. Or we had our own journeys and our own stories. But then, of course, then suddenly we treat the other as an object, or as an object to win. It becomes a winning and losing proposition, right? And also, but we justify that because of the kind of theology that we have. Now, I'm not sure I have a very easy answer for this, because even within the Christian community, you already have those who are very hard exclusivists, meaning that you have to confess that Jesus Christ is Lord now here on earth, and versus those who take a bit more agnostic position. We should leave it finally to God. Let's just share our faith, and there's an element of, you know, openness. You can't coerce even through your arguments. You know, you may try. You are passionate to persuade, but these are very difficult lines. You know, so I don't think I have a solution, but definitely the Christians have been wrestling with this and are still revisiting this again. Of course, I take some comfort from the example of Bishop Leslie Newbigin, the late Bishop Leslie Newbigin, who was a bishop in India for many years. All right? So long story short, he tries to propose a way where the Christian doesn't see himself as the judge, but rather as a witness. There's one way that he tries to wrestle with it. So as a witness, you merely witness as a testimonial, all right, of your experience of God. In that sense, what Ihsan was talking about, there is an element of sharing of life. I mean, the Hannah Yo case is a very interesting one. She shares her personal journey, all right, but someone accuses her of proselytizing, right? So that is the elephant in the room, and the Christian community is wrestling with that. I think the document that we have with the Christian Witness is one step forward. Some theologians offer some perspectives, but there's still no shared agreement on this. And usually, the ones that take a more exclusivist position would be more aggressive and maybe faster growing in their churches because they are winning converts. But then again, we also have to reflect, what does conversion really mean? Is it just getting the numbers, or is there really depth in this understanding? The Roman Catholics say that before you become a Catholic, you need to go through quite a long period of catechism. Even if some may be critical of the Alpha course, there's this course from Britain where people go through 12 weeks of learning the basics of the Christian faith. It is at least a process in which people can think through how they understand their faith. But still, the theology of religions is probably the most pressing topic for Christian theology today. So I take that as an ongoing challenge for us to work on it. And likewise, the other. Of course, I think from a Muslim perspective, I hear different messages, like yesterday Chandra's comment, he says about religious diversity is built into Islam, for example. So some may argue that there's some differences in the theology of religion coming from that point of view, where Christianity, if you take the very strict proselytizing conversionist exclusivist view, that means if you do not become a Christian, you will go to hell, framing it in very crude terms, I would say that's problematic if you frame it in those terms, because even scripturally, one talks about, we'll hear the good news about Christ, and then ultimately you could talk about the judgment is finally in God's hands. So we don't add to it to make it happen. But like all elephants, we take it one bite at a time. One bite at a time. And for as far as Ihsan is concerned, just one final comment. I hope that in Malaysia we can come to a place where all of us can be confident to share what deeply motivates us, without feeling that I'm afraid that you're worried that I'm proselytizing you, or vice versa. I joke about it with Faruq often at times, or with friends. And sometimes humor is my way of dealing with it. But my hope is that we can enlarge this kind of confidence. I think Marina wrote years ago when it was our controversy, we need to be confident Muslims, or confident, I would translate it as confident Christians. And it's in that confidence that we can share openly without treating the other as, without acting like a salesperson. You know, I'm not selling a product. You know, my religion, spiritual practices, faith, all that is not a product to be sold. Then we are locked into this kind of consumeristic, treating religion as a consumeristic item. But my religion is a way of life. It's what shapes me and makes me who I am. I think we should have that space. And I applaud RF for creating that space. And thank you for having me.